Hello, this is Edith Newmeyer, and I'm the author of the book, The Mystery of Adam. I'm going to do a video today again on biblical gender equality. And I came across somebody who was um, questioning if there is gender in the Godhead. And at first I was really confused about it because she was, of course, saying that there is no gender in the Godhead, in the Trinity. And she was um, basing her uh, belief on rejecting the dualistic system that exists in this world. Now, I am not so quite sure if this dualistic system that we're experiencing in this world, black, white, light, darkness, um, good, bad. Um, Again, and she added, of course, male, female to this dualistic thinking. If this dualistic thinking is only or can only be applied to this world or only exists in this three-dimensional world. And I'm thinking, and it cannot apply to the heavenly realm and or the spiritual. And I just do not agree with that. I just had a hard time with understanding where she really is coming from. See, what I believe is the problem with duality in this world is that it's not in balance, and therefore it has become a problem. It swings from one side to the other without ever staying in balance. And that's where duality goes wrong. I'm thinking about duality in form of the yin and yang, which the yin and yang symbol is totally equal, right? And it's in total balance. So for me, that is what the Godhead of the Trinity represents, is a total imbalance, as being in balance, okay? I absolutely believe there's gender in the Trinity, in the Godhead. There's gender in the heavenly. Now we know that there is no sexuality, of course, in the heavenly. In other words, the sexuality is related to our biology and our needing to procreate. And so that is part of the gender in this world. Each gender has the specific sexuality attached to it, which, of course, doesn't exist in the heavenly. When our body is gone, it's not attached to it. Now, people say that angels don't have a gender. Again, I am not 100% sure if that is the true statement, or if it's a better statement that uh, angels don't have sexuality attached to them. Because I believe there is possibility that gender is expressed in angels. Okay, for instance, some people view angels as men. Every time they appear in the Old Testament, for instance, they appear as men. And really, I don't know of one who is a female. Now, again, their appearance in a male body does not mean that their gender is necessarily male at all. I just, know that they appeared in a male body. That's all. And it may be related to their spiritual gender. And I'm going to say spiritual gender. But before I continue, I first became, when I did the research in this area, I became aware of why people may reject gender in in the heavenly or in the Trinity. We have a lot of misconceptions about what gender is. And I think that has happened because of the fall. The fall totally messed up our view of gender, and especially in our world. And of course, sin divides us, right? And so it divided the two gender, and did not allow them to realize that they are one, truly one. When God created male and female, he created them one at first. Okay, the first Adam, first human being, was male and female in one. Before God divides the first Adam and makes them separate, male and female. So in the beginning, there were male and female in one, and there was no difference. One was not over the other. One didn't have authority over the other. Okay, one is not below the other. They were truly equal in that first human being. Okay, and so when they were split, that gave this human being the ability now to view themselves as individualistic, and after the fall, they could actually um, um, fight each other. I'm looking for this word. They could fight each other. They could dominate each other. Okay, and I'm using dominate each other. Okay, because it is not just only that the male is dominating the woman. The woman tries to dominate the man, and not only that, we try to dominate each other. So this dominating, this seeing ourselves as this individualistic person and not ourselves as us, the human being, destroyed our understanding of what gender is. And so it put a very negative spin on gender. And so today, a lot of people, they think there is something wrong with gender, and they think that, well, if gender does not exist, then we don't have the problems associated with gender. But the problem is not the gender, the problem is sin, and that we do not see each other as equals, okay, but try to dominate each other. So this out of balance of this yin and yang is the problem, okay, that we are now out of balance. It's either this, you heard about the pendulum swinging, right? It's either this side or this side. When do you ever see the middle and it being in harmony and in balance? Very seldom do you see anything in balance. It's always the pendulum swinging this side, pendulum swinging that side. And that has absolutely nothing to do with how we truly see gender. Because when we see truly gender, we realize that it is equal, each gender is equal, and it is important um, for, the balance. And really, it is important for diversity, in a sense, by diversity. But when we start fighting each other, that is not there. So I have realized very well that this problem with people not acknowledging that there's gender in the Trinity is because they are afraid, because they look at what has become of gender, and especially how one has controlled the other negatively, Like, for instance, the male gender is dominating the female gender to such an extreme um, that it is unhealthy and detrimental. So they're saying, well, if gender is gone, then we don't have to worry about it. Also, people look at people putting like a male gender on God. Well, God must be male, okay? Why? Because he is described as Father, and Jesus is, of course, a man. And so they're thinking in terms that, well, we need to put away with that. That can't be, that can't be true. God is not described as female. But yet, many names, or I know of one name of God, which is really described as feminine, like El Shaddai is actually a feminine um, side of God, a feminine name of God. Now we know that God is described in female terms, is described as a woman or a female gathering, its chicks in a sense, gathering its people. And that's a female kind of expression that God is like a hen gathering its chicks and they didn't want to. Okay, so God is many times described in a feminine terms. So there is femininity in God. Now I totally believe that when this first human being who was male and female in one, when that was divided, this male femaleness was not completely divided. Um, but that each person, and each male and female, has the opposite um, gender in them still. Like, I'm a woman, and so I have male and female traits inside of me. Okay, I'm born with male and female traits. Every human being is born with male and female traits, but we can also choose what side we develop more stronger. So if we have a female body, it becomes obvious that we develop our female personalities more than our male personalities. Okay, but I really believe that each person, each human being could be in total harmony in itself, combining and developing both sides, the male and the female sides. Now, I know that is hard to understand, and people say, oh, that is not biblical. Yeah, it is biblical. It's very biblical. Remember, the first human being was really what? Male and female. Okay? And it was divided for the purpose of sexuality, that, we have two sexes that now can produce an heir or offspring. So maybe that was the reason. But in reality, that gender is inside each one of them still. Maybe a male has more male components and a female has more female components. Um, but at the end, we need to bring both of them together, which is extremely important in a healthy marriage, that we bring them together and we balance them again. Anytime these two genders are out of balance, it is unhealthy, which is in the traditional marriage. Okay? People talk a lot about patriarchy. And or you can say matriarchy. It doesn't matter what you say. If one is out of whack, as one takes over, okay, and the other is being swooshed down, it is unhealthy. It doesn't matter what's on top, whether matriarchy is on top, patriarchy is on top. It does not matter. It's out of balance. Only when the two come together in marriage and balance out, That's when we have a healthy and true marriage that was intended by God. Okay, so two genders come together, they're balanced within themselves. Each one is balanced within themselves. They come together and they're balanced again. They enter the church, which is God's body. Okay, and in that God's body, in this church, again, you have male and female members, which balance each other out. If you again have men on top, it is out of balance. You have women on top, it's out of balance. Okay? So only as they balance each other out and they're in equality do we have healthy relationships and healthy functioning organisms. Okay? Because the church is an organism. It is not an institution. Because an institution is cold and most of the time, of course, hierarchical organized. And when something is hierarchical organized, it's not in balance. It's out of balance. So gender in the Trinity is in balance. So how do I see that when we only hear, oh, God the Father, and of course, Jesus the Son? Well, it's very, very simple. I have talked about that in my videos, and my next book is exactly about that. First, let's look at Messiah. Okay, Messiah is two genders. Okay, and I know people don't see that. We don't see that because we don't have a clear understanding. We see Messiah as male. We only see Messiah as Jesus who came from heaven, who was a male, the Word that became flesh, who was a male. Okay, or at least in this world, he had a male body. Okay, do not be confused. Okay, he had a male body. The Word came at a male body. But it does not matter. Nevertheless, this Word that came from heaven, this Jesus, was really male, okay? Because he was coming for what? The female, okay? He was the bridegroom and looking for his bride. And who is the bride? The bride is the church, okay? The bride is the church. So why is he looking for the bride? Because if you look at the first Adam, how he was split, and after they were split, God said, therefore the man shall leave father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they become one again. Okay, so also the bridegroom will leave father and mother and cleave to his bride, and they become one again because they were split. Now, how were they split? Well, it's very easy to understand. And there's a guy called Gene Edwards who I have mentioned before. And this Gene Edwards wrote a book about, well, I don't remember. Hold on, I will check it. Well, here is his book. It's called Christ Before Creation, and by Gene Edwards, and I have mentioned this book before. And he is he is a supporter. He's dead already, but he was a house church planter, so he was very familiar with this idea of church and how the church is not only the body of God or the temple of God or the body of Christ, but that the church is really the bride of Christ. And that he says that this bride of Christ was selected within God before the beginning of time. So in other words, before the beginning of time, we were selected within God who is going to become that bride. And that bride was disconnected from this, from Christ, from the Word, when we became human beings. You remember that when God created in Genesis, when God created the first human being, and again, remember that first human being was a man and a woman at the same time. Okay, but it is, and I'm looking it up right now, it's Genesis 2 actually. It's not in Genesis 1. In Genesis 2, God made that first human being, and he breathed into his nostrils. First, it's a lifeless human being, right? And he breathed in his nostrils what? The Ruach. Okay, the Ruach, that's what it is. The Ruach HaKodesh, which is what? The Spirit of God. So during that time, that Spirit was breathed into this human being, which was, of course, male and female at the same time, at that time. And that human being became a human being or a living being. And it's at that time when God breathed into every human being this part of God that God set aside before the time as the bride of Christ. So before time existed, before this world existed, the bride existed with the bridegroom within God. Okay, remember, Messiah was in God. He was God, right? The Word was God, and he was with God, and he was God, right? So within this God, the Word existed, and within this Word, the bride also existed, as well as the bridegroom. Okay, and when he breathed into this first human being, he breathed into that first human being the Ruach, the whole section of God that would become the bride, separated from the bridegroom. And so that's what this Edwards believes, and that's what I believe, because that parallels the creation of the first human being that God created, the first Adam. Okay, in reality, Paul's talking about the second Adam, which is Christ, but I believe the second Adam is really the first Adam. It's the heavenly Adam, okay, that existed before the first Adam was even created. But the first Adam is the shadow of the heavenly. So it reflects what the heavenly Adam is, male and female. Now let's look at Genesis when God says that. And I think a lot of people just really want to interpret that with their own words. Genesis 1:27 says, so God created mankind, which I believe is human, it should be humankind, had nothing to do with a man. It's the NIV, right? The NIV translates Ha-Adam, the original word, with mankind, which it's better than with man. God created man in his own image. Mankind, at least we know we're talking about humans, okay? So God created humans, or human beings, in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. This male and female relates to the image of God. So we know that the image of God is male, female. Okay, so you know God is male, female. You know that the Word was male, female. Okay, but this female was separated when the first Adam, earthly Adam, was created, and it was breathed into his nostrils. Okay, it was breathed into his nostrils. Now again, of course, you see that what he breathed into into the nostril was not only really only female, but it was a mix, because now we know that there is a mix in there, male female mix. Okay, and I know that is very hard to understand. And so now God is dividing this first human being in male and female. I already said, that we in ourselves are never completely male or female. Okay, as we have a body, a male and a female body, it just becomes more obvious that we develop, or we think, even culturally, we think we have to develop a certain gender um, that correlates with our sexuality. Okay, but gender is something beyond sexuality. It's beyond sexuality, which exists also in the Trinity. So I do understand now, which kind of is good. I do understand now people that question, this gender in the Godhead. But I just want to say that much. There is gender, but it is in total equality. Okay? It's in total harmony. So you're saying, well, we always hear about the male side of God. Well, it's because our Bible was written by men. Now, Phyllis Triple, if you want to read her book, The Rhetoric of Sexuality, I think that's what it's called, Phyllis Triple, that's exactly what she came to believe, is that the Bible was written by men, okay, by men. And so what they see and perceive is the male side of God, okay? Women perceive more the female side of God. That's why we need to put the two of them together in order to get the whole understanding of who God is. If we're only looking at the male side of God, we see a male, heavy male personality. If we look at the female side, if we're female, we see more the female side. Okay, so both need to be put together. And unfortunately, the Bible is written by men, and so therefore we get a very heavy male side, exclusively male view. And so what do we see more? Well, we see more God as a male. Okay, the Father. Now, do we hear very much about the Ruach or the Holy Spirit? We don't hear that much. I mean, we see in the Old Testament, if you want to look up something about the Holy Spirit, which is wisdom, okay, or the wisdom of God, you will find out that it is described more as a feminine personality, okay? So that we have the Ruach more as a feminine aspect, of God. Again, I think I did already mention El Shaddai, who is more a feminine concept. So if we really look at the Bible and the way God is portrayed, there's very few instances where God is presented in a female, the female personality of God. But again, if we have more and more women describing God, we become to more holistic representation of who God is. Okay, so I want you to kind of look at things in that term. I need some feedback on this. How do you see this? Okay, how do you see this gender played out in the Trinity? Does it exist or does it not exist? Do we have to throw gender out just because Unfortunately, it was very skewed and very distorted by sin? Or can we go beyond this distortion and find the true um, purpose of gender and the true balance of gender, like this yin and yang? And I know people are going to say, oh, yin and yang is, Asian pagan culture, but yin and yang is actually showing you how things, should be. They are in balance, male, female, black, white, in balance, not one taking over, because then you have a great balance. But anyways, I just want to finish up today because I already have 30 minutes. And so I want to finish up. Please tell me what you think. I need to know. I want to know what you think. The more people we have talking about this and researching about this and not being afraid um, about looking at the truth. Okay? We don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We don't have to do that. Only because we have gotten this wrong with gender, we don't have to just throw it out all together. We're going to have to look at it how it really was meant. I will finish up though and leave your comments, and I hope this is going to stimulate your own research. See you later.